he has met with Hamas leadership, and he says he affirmed to the Hamas leadership that Donald Trump is determined to proceed with his plan regarding the Gaza Strip, and the United States rejected any plan to displace the residents of the Gaza Strip. We know that before they were talking about J.D. Vance, Donald Trump, they're talking about no annexation of the West Bank for Israel. And right now with the case of Gaza, how much of what they're doing right now, Jared Kushner is doing, is gonna produce some sort of positive outcome for Palestinians?
No, I don't know. I mean, honestly, look, the positive sign is they're talking. And he's talking directly to Hamas, apparently. So that's good news. He's not ignoring them, and he's saying, and he's telling them at least, they're not going to be displaced. So, but is that something I'd take to the bank as a ironclad promise that won't be broken? No. So, at least it's a move in the right direction.
Yeah. Al Jazeera reported that that Kushner advised Hamas leadership not to rely on the results of the Israeli elections, and that Israel is united with the United States on its position regarding the Gaza Strip. What is that unification? What is that? What does that mean, that Israel is united with the United States?
I have no idea. Well, I have no idea what he means. I mean, that seems to contradict what he said before.
Yeah.
I mean, the initial quote you read seemed to imply, hey, we're not going to allow the Palestinians in Gaza to be displaced. And then he says the United States is 100% with Israel. Israel wants to displace the Palestinians. So that's what I'm saying. It's very contradictory. Kushner sounds like he's trying to please everybody, and when you try to do that, you please no one.
There were reports of Turkey, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and all these GCC countries coming together and condemning Israel because they don't want to go to the next step of that agreement they had with the Board of Peace. And do you think that are they going to be able to put pressure on Donald Trump, these countries all together? And
no.
Pakistan, Indonesia, all these countries coming together, Jordan.
They're useless. They big talkers don't do anything. So so far we've seen, hell, they could have stood up. They didn't need to wait for Donald Trump to put them together to stand up and not only condemn, but take some sort of concrete action to punish Israel for the genocide of the Palestinians. And they haven't done it. So, they're engaged with what I'll just call it political theater.
How much of, Larry, what's going on in the West Bank should be connected to Gaza? Or is there, in the mind of the establishment or Donald Trump and his administration, do they consider these two parts of Palestine as do they have the same policies for the two sides? I'm talking about the West Bank and Gaza, or they see them separate?
Does who have the same policy? The U.S.?
Like the United States, when they see the West Bank, they see differently from Gaza, or they have the same policies?
I think they treat it a little differently. They see at least the West Bank with the Palestinian Authority and Palestinian police there. But again, the United States is doing nothing to stop the settlers. After that, even Mike Huckabee condemned the settlers the other day. Real big deal. Strong letter of condemnation. That's like Leonardo DiCaprio and Titanic writing a strongly worded letter to the White Star Line. He still drowned.
Yeah.
So, the Palestinians are still being killed and displaced. Their homes are being destroyed by these settlers. It's just it's a crime against humanity. These settlers are like vermin, and they need to be reined in. They need to be stopped, if necessary, with force. But the Israeli police and Israeli military stand by and enable them. And they're attacking Christians as well as Muslims.
How many? Who's going to be acceptable for Israel to be? I'm talking about the military, because they're talking about. It seems that within this board of peace, this so-called board of peace, they're talking about putting troops on the ground in Gaza in order to keep two sides, somehow mediate or controlling the conflict between the two sides. Who's going to be acceptable for Israel to be part of that operation?
I don't know. As long as they have a friendly state, they take Colombian troops or Argentine troops because of the public support voiced by their respected presidents. They can go for that. They're not going to accept a Muslim country like Indonesia or Malaysia or Pakistan. So it is, the Palestinians they're screwed.
Yeah. Do you see the possibility of Brazilians being there, or they have some sort of?
No, they won't let, unless the president of a country's professed love, adoration, offered to kiss Bibi's ass. For example, they could take Indian troops, Argentine, Colombian, now Venezuelan. Like Venezuela's in a position to offer such a thing. But no country that is Muslim, they wouldn't allow the Turks, the Pakistanis, the Indonesians, the Malaysians anywhere near it.
It was reported that there is no round of negotiations between Israel and the government in Lebanon. Because it says that there is no plan of the further negotiations anytime soon. At the same time, we see the escalation happening in the southern part of Lebanon. So there are two options. One of them is getting back to the war. So far, it seems that Hezbollah is controlling everything in order not to escalate with Israel. And the other point would be, some limited conflicts happening. How do you see the situation? And is it? Do they really believe that these negotiations with the government in Lebanon gonna get somewhere positive? Gonna get somewhere constructive?
I think even reporting on negotiations between the government of Aoun and the government of Bibi Netanyahu is a waste of time, effort, and energy. It's meaningless. It's not going to change anything. It's not just set up or designed to deal with the underlying issues, the fundamental cause, which is Israel's imperialist actions against Lebanon. Israel is trying to create a buffer, but it's no such thing. They want to occupy that territory, just as they've occupied the Golan Heights in Syria. They can continue to take and occupy territory and declare it their own and try to settle it.
Larry, could you check your microphone if your microphone is connected to StreamYard?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. somehow it seems that your voice is just it's okay right now.
Okay.
The point with Syria, I assume that the way that Turkey is reacting to the case of Gaza, they're concerned about Syria as well.
But how is Turkey reacting to the case of Gaza? They're not doing a damn thing, other than continuing to sell Israel oil. You know, they want to stop Israel and what they're doing in Gaza and what they're doing in the West Bank. Cut off the oil, for starters. But they're not doing that. So, you know, blah, 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 and then they don't do a damn thing. You know, I think Erdogan is just a disgraceful figure.
But when it comes to Syria, this is something different for Erdogan, in my opinion. And
big talker. But what's he done? I mean, can you name me one thing that he's now done?
They said that they're not going to they're trying to stabilize the situation in Syria. I don't know how to.
Well, like I said, cite me something that he has done. An action. Deployment of forces.
He left us, Erdogan left us with nothing to help him make his case. Yeah, it's so difficult to, to defend his position, by the way.
Yeah, no kidding. He is indefensible. No, I describe him as the transgender Muslim leader. You know, he pretends to be a lot of things that he's not. He declares himself to be some strong Muslim. He is not. Declares himself to be the leader of some great rebirth of the Ottoman Empire. No, nowhere close. A man of principle? Absolutely not. Hell, if his mother was still alive, he'd sell her into prostitution if given the chance. I think he's that despicable.
By the way, he is so powerful. If he decides to do something for both, or I would say even for Lebanon, he has the power. I don't know, by the way, if he perceives that he has that sort of power to do something.
Well, what do you mean he has the power? Let me get you to elaborate on that.
Because with the case of the military power, they have a powerful army in Turkey.
Yeah.
And politically, they have the ties with, I would say regionally, they have the ties with Iranians, which other countries like Saudi Arabia, they don't have that sort of connection with Iranians. Turkey has that connection because of the history between the two sides. So they're in a good position to bring all of these countries together. That's the power of Turkey, in my opinion, which Pakistan is trying to help with that. But Pakistan is not the way Turkey is because of this sort of culture of Turkey. Somehow, they were part of the Muslim Brotherhood. Pakistan was not part of that. They have the connection with Egypt. Pakistan is not that powerful in that direction. It's in many ways, Turkey can play a very important role in bringing all of these countries together.
That's a different question. If Turkey, well, number one, if Erdogan reflected the will of the Turkish people, then yes, I would say he would be a potentially very powerful and influential figure. But he ignores what the Turkish people are saying. And the Turkish economy's terrible. So he doesn't have any economic power. It is true he has a large military. But even and on some of the military hardware and technology they produce, yeah, it's sort of so-so, like the Bayraktar drone. It's been okay, but it's not great, and it's not terribly advanced. Russia's, been able to make great advances on the drone platforms it received from Iran initially, the Shahed. So Turkey it would like to be influential. I've got real doubts this pact that they formed with Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. They're talking about joint military exercises. How the hell does that work? So the Turks and the Saudis are largely U.S. weapon system based. Pakistan's Chinese based.
Yeah.
So how do you integrate those two systems to get what's called interoperability? What kind of communications infrastructure do you put in place so that everybody can talk to each other, for starters? So I think there's some real obstacles for that. They're talking about it, and they're even talking about saying, "Oh, we're going to have exercises." Okay, well, I've only got almost a quarter of a century of experience doing that. You don't just say, "Hey, we're going to have an exercise. See you next week, okay?" No, there is you have to agree in the broad terms what you're going to do, and then they have the initial planning conference, and they call it an IPC, and then you had a midterm planning conference. So the planning for this can go on a minimum of 12 months, more likely 18 months before the actual exercise takes place. So is it possible that Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey have been talking about this for 6 months? Maybe. So if they've been talking about this, planning for it for 6 months, then maybe they can pull it off in another 6 months. But I haven't seen any evidence to support that. I think that being overly optimistic. So just getting them to be able to communicate, to sort out air movements with various aircraft, coordinate artillery strikes, that kind of there's a lot of things that's why you do exercises to try to work on those issues. But they're a long ways from being able to implement that, in my view.
They wanted to be part of the European Union, and the leadership. It's been a while, and they were trying to be
over 25 years. Yeah, I'd call that a while. Quarter of a century. I think they need to get the message, that Europe is not interested in having a relationship with you. They just want your army. Protect the Europeans, and otherwise screw off. We don't want you part of our club, you smelly. It's racist, really. They go, they're a bunch of Muslims, and they're not European. They're not high-born like us. So, it's quite the insult, and the fact that the Turks keep hanging around to be insulted like that, you gotta say, guys, don't you have any self-respect? Move away and say, "Oh, okay." Just tell them, "Thanks, we're pulling out of NATO. Forget about NATO. And we're going to build something here in the Middle East." That's what they should do. But Erdogan wants to have it both ways, and the money out of the Israeli oil is too good to pass up.
You were talking about the foreign policy of Turkey since the war in Ukraine started, and every time we were mentioning, are they going to decide about getting closer to the Russia and China during the war? Do you think that are they getting closer to that position? Somehow feeling that their future is in the East, not in the West?
No, they're moving in the exact opposite direction. They're threatening both Russia and Ukraine over the Black Sea. They're not making any kind of conciliatory gestures towards Russia. Based upon the last remarks I saw from Foreign Minister Fidan. So, yeah, no, I think, like I said, the Turks have an identity confusion. They can't figure out whether they want to be a man or a woman. So then instead of that, they go, yes. They're trying to be both.
We have the same case with India as well. And what is important about Turkey and India, these two countries are dependent somehow on Russia. And you know that Russia wanted to make Turkey as a hub of energy. That could be huge for Turkey and the future of Turkey.
Yeah, but why do you believe that they're going to be smart like that? What actions have they taken in the past to show you that they're going to be smart about doing something that would actually benefit their country? You know, you think they'd like to have a good relationship with Russia. Yet what do? What does Erdogan do? Promises to take and hold the Azov guys, and then turns around and betrays his promise, lets them go. I said, I don't see, Turkey's got to figure out what they think their interest is, and that's what they're going to do. But it doesn't necessarily, what the smart one would be to make the deal with Russia. But I see no evidence that the Turks are smart. Turkish government, not the Turkish people.
Exactly. And the point, do you see the same way when it comes, do you see the same sort of signs coming out of India? India is a gigantic country. They're part of BRICS. And they can help BRICS, or they can be some sort of, they can play a destructive role in BRICS. It seems that they're getting closer to the West.
Getting closer to the West or the East?
To the West, because they're so close to Israel. And
well, you're talking last February. But since then, it's been quite clear to India that their future lies with Russia because of the oil and the gas. And I've not seen Modi or his foreign minister do anything provocative that would be seen as antagonistic to either Iran or to Russia or China. And they've got the presidency, I believe, of BRICS. So the BRICS summit is supposed to be held there this month or next month.
Yeah.
So under a different president, let's say, if Iran had been the leader, or China, or Russia, there'd been a lot more progress made this year. So India has been somewhat passive with respect to BRICS.
They're going to have the new summit going to be in India, and in September, if I'm not mistaken, September 17th, and they're going to meet again. And one of the main challenges right now is, I assume, how to get rid of, the sanctions that the United States is putting on them. Right now, two of these countries I would say even three of them. China is experiencing tariffs, U.S. tariffs in China. We have sanctions, tremendous sanctions, U.S. sanctions on Iran and Russia. And I assume the main objective of the upcoming summit would be, what can we do to resolve or to reduce?
No, that's already been addressed. China's been setting up this alternative financial network. You've got, and also in Russia. So Russia's been actually using uh, uh, one of the bitcoins as a way to move money, trying to set up the CIP system, cross-border interbank payment system. Now we even see like Argentina now, of all places, they're looking to do more business with China in Chinese currency as opposed to the U.S. currency. So no, they've been separating themselves from the U.S. dollar. And Iran, all of its financial transactions right now, to my knowledge, they're not taking place with U.S. dollars. They're doing it with Chinese currency. And that at some point is going to, the United States will wake up and realize, man, they've screwed themselves.
They're joining the BRICS Bank. Iran is integrating the banking system. It didn't happen so far. They're working on it right now. And if they do that, I assume that's going to bring a lot of changes to the trade they have with Russia right now, because when they're talking about isolating Iran, the only thing that Iran needs.
Well, say, who's isolating? You mean when the United States?
The United States isolating with the blockade and the land blockade they're talking about. It's impossible to blockade Iran from the Caspian Sea, and they're
right. How are they going to do a land blockade? I hadn't heard that bit of silliness.
Yeah, it's happening in their mind. I think that's the only, I don't know, through political pressures on these countries. And how long does it take for the Trump administration? Because to be logical, all these countries around Iran would think, how long Donald Trump would remain in his position? It's going to be 2.5 years. 2.5 years. And how are they going to get along with Donald Trump? Or they're going to consider, their neighboring country means Iran.
Right. Yeah, I mean, look, Iran, I think Iran's recognized it's not going to achieve anything of real substance through negotiations with the United States. Mm-hmm. So they're going to be, Iran's going to be prepared to go back to war if attacked, if the attacks renew. Otherwise, it's in the process of building up all these alternative financial routes and relationships, so that they're not trapped. I would argue they're in a better, Iran's in a better position today than it was in 2015. In 2015, you had China and Russia lined up with the United States, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom to impose sanctions. So back then, Russia and China said, yeah, we'll impose sanctions. Not today. They said, screw that. We're not doing that anymore. So that's what I mean. I think Iran's actually in a stronger position now, and Besant's attempt to isolate him is going to blow up in his face.
Yeah. Larry, New York Times reported that the Europeans are begging Washington to talk and to negotiate with Russia in order to, because they're fearing the winter is coming, and the Russian, the situation with the grains, with everything that Russia is doing in Ukraine, isolating Ukraine, would damage their economy as well. It's not just about Ukraine, it's about their economy as well. The other concern on their part is they want to be part of the negotiations between the United States and Russia, naming United Kingdom, France, and Germany. They feel that maybe the United States is going to talk with Russia without their participation. So they're not going to have any sort of understanding of what's going on.
Right. Why would the United States include them? They're useless, meaningless little countries. They're not economically important. They're not important in terms of industrial output. They don't control any natural resources. The military suck. They keep pretending that this is 120 years ago, and that they're still the relevant dominant world power, which they were at the time. That ship has come and gone. It's sailed.
It seems that they need the grains from Ukraine, and they're not getting them right now.
Who needs the grains from Ukraine?
United
Europe?
Kingdom, United Kingdom.
Yeah,
France,
they do. They need grains. They need oil. They need natural gas. They need the diesel and aviation fuel that's produced from the oil. Prices on that are going up. And the complaints among consumers are going up.
Their problem is that there are two countries to provide that. It's Russia and Ukraine. They're fighting. Russia and Ukraine is under control.
You mean the grain?
Yeah, the grain. I'm talking about the grain. Even with the fuel, they're getting fuel from India. It's the Russian oil going to India and refined and getting back to Europe.
Exactly right. They are refining it and then sending it back, refined. And India makes some money off. That's why I say India is not going to go out of its way, in my view, to antagonize Russia, because they need Russia.
Yeah. It's who's more fragile, Larry, today in Europe? Is it Germany? Is it France or the United Kingdom?
Boy, that's like asking in a midget contest which midget's the shortest. They're all about the same.
I think United Kingdom is in a better position compared to Germany and France. I don't know how much better, but it's somehow they're less dependent on Russian oil.
Well, in terms of, if you look at it in terms of debt to GDP, UK and France are worse off than Germany, but Germany's heading in that direction. In terms of loss of industrial output, that distinction belongs to Germany. So they suffer some real serious losses on that front. I guess the weakest right now, I would say, is probably France, followed by Germany, and then UK bringing up the rear.
Larry, how much of what do they need in terms of the energy is provided by the United States today? I assume that what they get from the United States is much more expensive than what they get from India.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I think it's gone up like 8-fold. So yeah, the U.S. Liquid natural gas is not cheaper. It's making U.S. gas producers quite wealthy. They're happy with it.
Is the United States sending some of these Venezuelan oil to Europe?
No. The U.S. is taking it. Paul Singer, remember him? He's the one that first did the first dossier on Trump, and then all of a sudden has become a Trump sycophant. He's got refineries specifically designed to handle that heavy sludge that they managed to pry out of the ground in Venezuela. It's not a pool of bubbling crude, as to quote the Beverly Hillbillies.
Larry, if the United States, if Donald Trump decides to declare victory and get back, or somehow decides to get out of the West Asia, let's assume, because right now we've learned the new aircraft carrier George Washington is going to be close to the Persian Gulf in the Arabian Sea.
Yeah.
And it means that, and it was mentioned that he's going to replace that with if I'm not mistaken, with Roosevelt, and is going to the Pacific to replace the George Washington. And it's going from California there, and it takes time to get there to the Pacific.
Right.
But you see the difficulty.
Well, if it's in the Pacific, if it's in San Diego, California, but it's I'd say that's probably 20 days to get to the Philippines, I think.
I thought that it takes more than 20 days to get there. I don't know but after all, the reason I mentioned that is the difficulties of what he's facing right now. So the question is he gonna, if he backs down, if he says that I'm okay with the current situation, they're getting somewhere, they have defined a new mechanism, I'm gonna get out. Is he gonna be, is he gonna be under political pressure from Democrats?
To get out of the war with Iran, or to get out of the war with Ukraine, or both?
I assume both, because the war in Ukraine, there is nothing there anymore. In Ukraine, what can he do? What else can he do?
Well, no, he can't do a lot. By the way, I just checked the maps. It takes two weeks to sail from San Diego, say, to the Philippines.
2 weeks?
Yeah.
So it's going to be. So, considering.
And then from the Philippines to, say, Chabahar, I think that's a good number, at least 2, maybe 3 weeks.
How do you? What is your understanding? Or is he going to get, into problems if he somehow decides to get out of these two wars?
He's already in problems.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking how much more he can get. So.
I was wrong. It's just a naval task force take about 10 days. So, total 24 days to go from San Diego to the Arabian Sea. I used it as Chabahar. So look, what's facing Trump, apart from his stupid policy decisions, is, I'll call it, institutional rot throughout the U.S. military, on the naval front, on the Air Force front, on the ground forces, on Army and Marine front. So, like, they face two critical problems right now with the Navy for resupplying and making sure those ships are properly supplied. One, they lost their supply warehouses in Bahrain and in Oman. Those have been destroyed. So they don't have a stockpile they can go draw upon. Even if they did, the problem is they cut down. They've got this, central logistics fleet that's part of the DOD, or Department of War, but it's really a civilian operation. They used to have 4 ships that could handle movement of, resupplying the ships with what they needed. These are called fast supply ships, I think. They got rid of 2 of them 10 years ago. So now when you've got a situation where these fixed supply bases you thought would be there are no longer there, and then you've got only 2 of these resupply ships, which they don't have any close port to go pull into to load up and refresh and refuel and then go back out. So it's a combination of those 2, which means the United States militarily, its readiness is falling to abysmal levels.
Is that providing him enough signs, or to
What do you mean signs?
I'm talking about I'm getting back to the same question. How difficult that would be for him to withdraw from Ukraine and from the West Asia?
It'd still be difficult, yeah. To avoid being accused of being a quote loser. Because they've been insisting all along, hey, there's no problem, everything's great on these ships. The morale, you guys are doing fake news. That's been their story. That's a lie. But that's been their story. But as soon as Trump pulls out, he'll come up with a spin about how we won. It was a great victory. Iran was begging for us to end it. It's just like, there's this movie out about 10 years ago. I think it was just on HBO. But Tom Selleck played General Dwight David Eisenhower. It was on the eve of the invasion of D-Day. And in one scene, General George S. Patton had to come see Eisenhower because Eisenhower was going to reprimand him and chew him out, potentially send him home. And so the character they had playing Patton was big and, nobody's going to tell me what to do. Then when he got in there, and the way they presented it in this movie, which I'm sure it's fictionalized, but they portrayed Patton as being a complete spineless wimp. Oh, don't send me home, please. I'll do anything, General Eisenhower. I'm sorry, groveled. And so he was groveling in front of Eisenhower. And then when he comes out, he's back to saying, I had him eaten out of my hand. He's not going to tell me what to do. We're seeing the same thing here with Trump. Yeah. He's behind the scenes. He's going to be doing some groveling or hiding in the food truck behind the chicken pot pies.
I don't know if you saw the movie they're talking about long before the war in Ukraine started. I don't remember the name of the movie, but it was a Hollywood movie. It said that if we control Iran, that's going to be the end of South Caucasus. That would be the end, domination of the oil market, everything. He says that he's describing it. They're in a room that they're talking with the president. They're representing the map of the region. They say this is the jewel of that region. We have to take it. And basically the same is happening right now. They're trying to do everything to control the Strait of Hormuz.
Who is? The United States?
The United States.
The United States has no control over the Strait of Hormuz.
But Donald Trump declared that the Strait of Hormuz is part of the United States.
Yeah, let's be precise. What the United States is doing is trying to disrupt or weaken Iran's control. Even though Trump claims, oh yeah, we got control, we're going to declare it American territory. Good luck with that. I mean, he just, the guy indulges in such grandiosity that he further discredits himself.
Larry, in 2 years, we're going to have, there are people who wants to, continue with the conspiracy theory that Donald Trump want to be, the next president of the United States in 2028, and he loves that. And you see, he posted, I don't know if you saw his latest, his latest post, it says, Trump 2028.
Yeah,
I'm gonna, you know,
yeah,
he
no, I
loves
saw
that.
that.
Yeah.
He's just trolling to get reaction.
Yeah. But if he in 2028, let's assume Donald Trump is removed from power, is someone else going to be in his position? And in Israel, let's assume Benjamin Netanyahu Benjamin Netanyahu being removed from power. That's possible as well. How is that going to change the situation with the war, with these two wars, one of them in Ukraine and the other one with the case of the Benjamin Netanyahu together with Donald Trump being removed from power?
Yeah.
Is that going to influence the situation in the West Asia?
Well, I don't necessarily see him being removed from power, but let's assume that Trump bails out. So what?
You don't see Donald Trump being removed from power in 2028? Because his term is going to end.
Yeah, when his term ends, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll depend on who's elected president. The Israeli lobby's influence in that election will be far, far less, I believe. They're already finding themselves becoming more and more isolated. I don't think the war in Ukraine won't be raging on in 2028. I doubt it will. I've been wrong before, but I don't think they can last that long. The Ukrainians and the Europeans. I think there'll be a financial crisis before then that'll make sustaining that war impossible.
But the Russian problem in Ukraine is not Ukraine itself, is Europe continuing the war. This is not Ukraine anymore.
Yeah, well, what can Europe do?
Long before this war of, you remember in Telegraph, whoever is watching us, you remember, Larry, we talk about it. Because there was a moment before all this madness happening with these drones. And Telegraph published an article saying that as the Ukrainian manpower is reducing, is diminishing, and they don't have that capabilities anymore. They don't receive, the long-range missiles, and they don't have the air defense system that capable of fighting Russia. And on the ground, they're not that capable. So the only solution for that is to attack Russia using drones. And so they were preparing long before this madness started. And they're going to continue.
You mean Europe?
United Kingdom. I would say the United Kingdom is the mastermind of these drones being used against Russia.
Nima, having grandiosity doesn't translate into actual being able to act. The best they can come up with right now are drone attacks on Wildberry, on commercial warehouses, which don't do a goddamn thing to alter Russia's military position and its ability to wage war against Ukraine. And if anything, we saw it with Lavrov's comments this last week. They're not going to ease up the pressure on Ukraine. They're going to simply expand the pressure.
I assume that United Kingdom was so active in Odessa and Nikolaev.
They were early on, but again, they don't have economic power. They don't have military power. Yeah, can they meddle? Can they provide intelligence? Yeah. Can they be a malignant nuisance? Yeah. But in terms of turning the war around, all they're doing is getting their every effort, every ounce of resource they pull into this is one less resource they've got access to. They're draining themselves.
Yeah. Thank you, Larry. Thank you so much. And tomorrow, the same time?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
All right, my friend. Yeah, but
See you.
yeah, look, forget this fantasy that the Europeans are worth a damn. They're not. Oh, they're pretenders.
I'm sure that I don't see any agenda. To be honest, in that sort, that strong agenda in Germany and France. But the case of the United Kingdom is totally different, Larry. They control Europe, the European Union, without being part of the European Union. This is the leverage they have. I was wondering, how are they capable of doing this?
Well, how do you say they control Europe? I don't see that.
The policies in